Hi, my name is Chris Atherton, and I'm going to talk about changing from junior classes to youth classes, and that could be a boat or a board. I give this talk as the British Youth Sailing's National Performance Manager, and one of my roles is to give advice on this. And please feel free to ring me or my performance or the performance managers that I work with, or I also give this as a parent whose boys have sailed single-handers, fevers, and then they've gone on to do 29ers, 420s, lasers, and they all windsurf. So some of the considerations for the new classes that you may want to consider. Does your sailor, or as a sailor, do you want to be a single-handed or double-handed sailor? So a crew or a helm. All three of mine came from single-handed classes. They didn't all think they wanted to do double-handed, and they all ended up doing double-handers and thoroughly enjoyed it. For me, the key thing is when you're choosing a class, it needs to be fun. As a sailor, and sailors need to really enjoy it, because if they're not enjoying it and getting the most out of it, then you're not going to stay in the sport. And above all, that is critical for us. So which boat? I'm going to talk a bit about the specifics of the boats that we have within our youth classes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an our class. But your considerations probably do hinge around your weight and your size. If you are 6 foot and growing, then you're probably going to be crewing or helming a single-handed boat or onto a board or a kite. So those are some of the considerations that you might want to think about. And the other thing is, what is available for you locally, or who else is available for you locally? Because ultimately, success in your youth classes will be determined by how much time you get out on the water. So there are youth recognised classes that we have. These are classes that we support through funding, which is performance-led, but they are work classes that we work in partnerships with. And they all offer good open training opportunities. So if you're thinking about some of the classes I'm going to talk about, they all offer good entry-level stuff as you're coming in. And then they go on to offer you more open training opportunities that is relevant to every level, to the top end of the youth level, to those coming in. Similarly, that's what they'll offer in the way of competitions. Anyway, I'm going to touch on the junior classes, on the youth classes now. And what I would say is that you really need to ring and speak to your performance managers that are local to you for help and advice. So I'm going to go through these quite quickly. So laser 4.7, it's a single-hander. The natural progression is into the radial, and then for the boys into the laser standard rig. The ideal weight for this boat is around about 55 to 70 kilos. You do need to be in that weight range to be competitive or going to grow to that range. Boys and girls will then move on to the laser radial, and the radial is the women's Olympic class. For the boys, it's the youth class, and that's a stepping stone to the standard. Typical weight range is around about 64 to 74 kilos. Now, quite often for those coming through from the windsurfing, they would have gone on to the RSX, but that's now been superseded at Olympic level by the Starboard IQ foil. So that's a foiling windsurfer. And you can see a photograph on the screen now. We don't know the weight yet, but this is an exciting class. But there's also opportunities for perhaps people to come from the junior classes to step across into the youth class, particularly if they can already windsurf. I've seen that happen, and people being successful at youth level windsurfing. Similarly, for the games in 2024, we've now also got the Formula Kite, which is emerging, and we're just in the process of trying to help establish an open training circuit for the kites. Then if you're looking at your double-handers, they're typically two, but the first one I'm going to talk about is a 420, which has what I class as a symmetrical spinnaker. But these can be sailed typically boy-boy, girl-girl, or mixed. And the competitions when you go overseas, of which there are lots, are often given in those kind of groupings. Typical weight range will be around about 110 to 130 kilos. Then the 29er is another double-handed boat. Again, this can be sailed boy-boy, girl-girl, or mixed. Of course, one of the things that happens when you go on to Olympic sailing, there's a lot more sailing mixed. And the typical weight range on this is 110 to 130 kilos. It's got a symmetric, an asymmetric spinnaker, and will be typically classed as a skip. Then a NACRA 15 is a high-performance cat. It's the youth class worldwide, as recognised, and it's got a weight range of around about 120. That varies there quite often, and these are usually sailed as mixed. And the typical progression for someone coming into these may be if they're going on to Olympic class to do the NACRA 17. That's it for this one. The next one will be done by Tim Hall, and he'll be talking about crewing, because he was a helm and went on to crewing and some of the considerations he had. Some of your performance managers for within the English regions are listed in front of you. Other people within the RYA would be myself, Jack Grundy, or Oliver Woodcock. And then if you're from the home countries, these are your key contacts. I hope that's been helpful. Please get in touch with your performance managers for more help and advice.